Another story coming out of the United States. Well, actually, we've looked at so many stories. Let's look at a different story again, shall we? This is the Just Stop Oil campaign group. They've become famous for disruptive protests, from blocking traffic on major roads to using orange paint and powder to disrupt art and sporting events. But they've now announced they are to disband at the end of April. It says it is won because bringing in no new oil and gas licences is now government policy. So did the protests work, or have the actions done more harm to the climate change cause than good? Gil Tavner is the Just Stop Oil spokesperson. On with us tonight. Hello, Gil.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
That's okay. And Chris and John are staying with us. Well, you're claiming victory then. But are you disbanding because it's all too much heat and some of you are getting banged up in jail?
Well, there's never a very clear black and white yes and no answer to these things. As you know, any decision, any sensible person or group making a decision will take on board an awful lot of factors. The first part of your question, have we succeeded? Well, we haven't saved the world yet, which is a pity, but our campaign was to just stop oil. At the beginning, our demand was for no new oil and gas licences. That the Labour Party took that on as a manifesto pledge, and that has been achieved. We then wanted to continue. We worked towards a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. We can't claim that we are the sole achievers of the Labour strategy at the moment. But you have to admit that we played a very significant part in keeping that right at the top of public consciousness, keeping it on the front pages, keeping it on the chat shows, so that everybody had heard of the licensing issue. So yeah,
I just wonder
Sorry, go on.
I wonder how unpopular your group is now, and when people hear Just Stop Oil, I wonder if they think about a group of anarchists.
We're far from that. I'm a teacher for a start, but we were never out for a popularity competition, and I'm sure you'll have heard already about the radical flank. Sometimes things need disrupting. We need something to stop the way we're doing something, to get society out of its rut, to engage emotion, whether that's anger, whether that's grief, and then to make people stop and think. And you'll know historically that disruptive protest has worked, say the suffragettes. We're not saying we are them, but we're employing similar tactics to try to achieve our aims. And we have done
I've never heard of the radical. I've never heard of the radical flank in my life. What's that?
In social movement theory, you have a movement that has a radical flank where they do things that maybe are unpopular, but you get the attention, draw attention to the issue, and that attracts more people to the sort of more moderate part of the movement. So, for example, it has been proven that with our actions, every action we've carried out has led to an increase in members for XR, and particularly Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace. So similar, a bit like Malcolm X compared to Martin Luther King.
Christopher White?
Sorry, go on.
It's fascinating listening to the group. I personally find it an incredibly selfish approach to a system. I genuinely, because look, I've been at sporting events and I know friends who've been stuck trying to get into work and seen the pictures on the TV of people trying to get loved ones to hospital.
I'm sorry. Can we just
hang on? No, let me finish. You've had your say.
Jill, let's let him finish.
Just let me finish. I won't take long. All I'm going to say is this: that there are, hundreds of thousands of people affected by the work that Just Stop Oil have done. And for Just Stop Oil effectively to claim victory is pretty hollow when actually this has been a trend in government policy for some considerable time. What's actually happened is the last Conservative government instituted through the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act in 2022 a really quite stringent approach to policing, which meant that most of the disruptions have led to convictions.
Can I stop you right where you are? Because you talk, first of all, let's put things in context and get a sense of perspective here. You say, thousands have been affected by what we do. Okay, minimally, no one's been hurt. No, nothing's been damaged. Nothing's been harmed. Billions are at risk of dying. Okay, if we continue with business as usual. And if you say, have we succeeded or failed? Both of you guests have been advisors to prime ministers. And through decades, of us knowing the science and knowing the damage ahead. Scientists have been warning us for decades. I know that. Ordinary people know that. So with you two as advisors to prime ministers, why are we in the mess now that we're in now? So if you say that what we've done in the last 2 years has caused the problem, I think you're really just not getting a sense of perspective. You're just being disingenuous. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be lectured by people who've contributed to the mess we're in.
Go on, Chris.
Well, no, first of all, I wasn't lecturing. I was just reflecting on the fact that thousands of people have been royally frustrated by a group that actually has committed criminal damage and disrupted thousands of people's lives. So, this, talk about lecturing and so on. Can I point out that it was a Conservative government that introduced the legal effect of having net zero by 2050, and the Labour government that has introduced rules or consulting on rules to limit the new oil drilling across the way. So government is taking action on this. So let's not take away from the fact that this is basically a bunch of people who are just out there to really disrupt people's lives and have things the way they want to.
Do you think we set out thinking in the morning, what should I do with myself today? Let's form a group that disrupts people for no reason at all. You talk about people being frustrated. We're trying to act against people dying, okay, being killed by wealth and by greed and by the system we have at the moment. Listen, and you say that with some degree of pride that the Tories brought in these laws. Yeah, Sunak admitted they were drafted by Policy Exchange, an extremely influential think tank in Westminster, probably the most influential, funded, well, it generally doesn't admit it, but funded by ExxonMobil and oil companies. Then the sentences were heavily influenced, as you'll know, by the so-called independent Wolney report. And Wolney is a lobbyist for oil and gas companies and for the arms industry. So these laws and the sentencing have been paid for by corporates, and they're an attempt to stop the truth being heard.
The sentences have not been. You say you're a teacher.
They came immediately. The sentencing frenzy was came right off the back of Wolney's report. You look at the timescale.
You're conflating two issues, aren't you?
Yep. Those two
deliberately
do intersect.
You're deliberately conflating two issues, aren't you?
I'm deliberately pointing out. I'm deliberately joining the dots and making connections, just in case people want to think those connections aren't there.
John McTiernan, we've all heard of them. Is that job done?
Look, I think Just Stop Oil have done the right thing. They've made their case. They made it forcefully, and as George Bernard Shaw said, progress is made by unreasonable people. You have to be unreasonable sometimes. The suffragettes, Just Stop Oil, we make progress when people draw our attention to big issues that everybody else can just go by and go through. Put on the table of politics. And yeah, Chris is right to say that Theresa May was the one who signed in as Tory Prime Minister, signed into law the commitment to getting to net zero. But that was a response to the politics. The campaigns outside Parliament influence politicians, and that is to the good, actually, of democracy.
But Jill, you say that you haven't damaged anything. When you walk in and you deliberately, not you personally, but your organisation damages a Van Gogh
So
painting.
you're saying damages the Van Gogh again? It was covered in a glass sheet. The painting was not damaged.
You damaged the frame.
Stop this normative way of speaking.
You damaged the frame. You deliberately damaged the frame. And you lot didn't repair it, did you? You lot didn't repair it. And you disrupted the day that people were having in that museum, and you took things into your own hands. And some people might think, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?
Have a chat with the people in LA or the people in Valencia who lost loved ones, and say, are they more concerned about the damage being done to their environment, that they're at risk of floods, they're at risk of fire? Similarly, people who can't get their homes insured in the UK because of the flood risk caused by our collapsing climate patterns. You ask them whether throwing soup at a plastic sheet on a painting is worse than the destruction, the real criminal damage that's being done to the future. And think about the artworks that are going to be at risk from fire, from flood, in so many of the world's cities that are going underwater.
Can I, Jill, ask just one last question? And it's this.
It's the last one, but yeah.
You're enjoying this, okay. I've spoken to some of your colleagues from Just Stop Oil in the past about how your organisation is actually organised and how a decision is made. Is it made by committee? Is there a vote? And I haven't had too much success in getting answers to that. Within that context, but within that context, I'm interested in who's controlling the disbandment of the organisation, and
it's really interesting
and how it's not going to be the case, Jill, that those people that want to keep on protesting under the banner of Just Stop Oil, who's going to stop them? So how do we actually know your organisation's disbanding?
I've heard you asking
who's
that
disbanding
question.
it?
I've heard you asking that question before, and maybe it's hard for people to think we're not sort of hierarchical. We work in quite a democratic way. There's no particular person at the top. We make group decisions. Some people step up for a bit, then they get tired, worn out, step back. So it's this sort of group decision that's evolved. And basically, Just Stop Oil you're not a member, you don't pay membership. It was a campaign, and the campaign has sort of reached a natural end. And yes, and I talk to a lot of people in Just Stop Oil, and certainly being on the spokes team, we discuss a lot what's next. No, but we don't know. It's, as I said earlier, people get together, they think hard. We're committed people. We're people who are very concerned about what's coming. We are well informed. And so we're not going to back down. But as yet, basically, we're a very small group of people who are very concerned. And we wanted to do something about the oil and gas thing. And that's what we did.
Okay.
But in doing so, it became very clear that the machine that we're up against, this immense power of the corporate machine, particularly the oil and gas machine, not only influences our politics, and let me continue, and our judiciary, but also horribly influences the media. So people aren't told the truth. And the reason we're getting put into prison is because we tell the truth. And those big powers don't want that truth to be heard about the trouble that's ahead and what we need to do to stop it.
Jill, thank you very much. Chris White, John McTiernan, thank you very much indeed. 08085 909 693. Thank you, Jill. Here comes the news at 11:36.